Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've seen Mission Impossible Fallout. Mission Impossible 6. As it's much easier to refer to it.
Fallout's pretty easy.
What do you reckon?
I loved it, as you could probably tell. But I didn't love it as much as I had been primed to love it. Yeah, like I think my favorite is still the one set in, I forget which Middle Eastern country where he walks up the side of the building.
Oh, Dubai.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, Dubai. The Burj Dubai.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Really. Well, actually, my favorite is the first one, which I think is a kind of masterpiece.
I agree.
The weakest one was the second one, I think.
Everyone agrees on that.
Yeah, and then it's almost like I think they've become increasingly better, right?
Yeah.
But this one, which is I think it's great. It's still, I wouldn't say it's better than the last one.
It somehow seemed to lack a little something in the first act, I'd say.
Yes.
Let's give a spoiler-free version of the plot. Actually, the plot isn't actually hugely important. So, there's a new member on the IMF who's been put there by the CIA.
Yes.
Henry Cavill's character, and thereafter there's these 3 plutonium bombs. That's your sort of central MacGuffin. They're going off around the globe. There's a bloke who you don't know who he is. I mean, literally, they don't have a face. They just know his name. Maybe he's a ghost. Maybe he's a story. Maybe he's actually a real guy. But he's the guy they're sort of tracking. Blah, 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 blah. They're after these bombs. That's it.
I think it's almost like, let's not even bother talking about the plot because it really is inconsequential. What's important in this film is the pattern, right? There's a preamble, then a mission is set out, really, and, then the film leads you, like you said, there's MacGuffin, so it leads you to places you don't expect, and, some things are just used to set up tension. They're all punctuated by quite extraordinary set pieces, and then at the end, you have a massive set piece that resolves everything with a post wrap-up section.
Right, spoilers ahead.
Okay.
It's the same pattern as before, and we talk about whatever we want now. So what I think is kind of lacking early on is that the film is setting up a certain level of mystery around Henry Cavill's character because he's part of the IMF, which is a very tight-knit team. He's been placed there by the CIA, and the CIA and the IMF are at loggerheads slightly. Alec Baldwin and who's the head of the CIA in this?
Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett. They butt heads a bit. So he's kind of in the team, kind of not in the team, and also because I think everyone has sort of heard heard about the film beforehand, they were kind of aware that Henry Cavill was a bad guy. To the film's credit, it makes Henry Cavill's character more of a mystery than I expected. I expected it to be pretty obvious that he's just a bad guy who's sort of finagled his way into the IMF to sort of pull some strings, which he is, but you kind of don't know, is he actually this bad guy whose name they only know? And that's his alias, and he's sort of finagled his way in, or is he kind of working with someone else, or what's going on exactly?
The thing that you know from the very beginning is that he's going to be Tom Cruise's nemesis, because you only have a big star like that, opposite Tom Cruise if they're going to be given something to do.
Yeah.
And actually, so that he's going to be the nemesis. Right, so whatever the film is telling you, is bounded or rooted in the fundamental knowledge that he's going to be the antagonist, right? It's there in the publicity as well,
yes.
And it's the logic of casting that big a star.
Right.
And in my view, Henry Cavill steals every scene he's in.
I think he's wonderful.
Yeah.
He's really well cast.
He's hale and bluff and hearty and kind of a little bit thick. Yeah, so obviously not...
Thick as in stupid.
Yeah, and I thought that it was interesting that I thought that about him, because obviously you can't be that kind of operative for the CIA and be stupid. But actually, it means that he's less bright than Tom Cruise, yeah? So it kind of has that connotation, And he's very sly, and, just funny. Really, I think he's wonderful.
And I'm sitting here sort of while we're talking about this, trying to work out what my point is about what is missing early on, and it's tough to because the film is really good, but I think actually it's that while the film is setting up these different strands and it is engaging in this slight air of mystery, actually what you want is for the relationships and goals to be clearer. And when they become kind of resolved and you know exactly what they need to do and who needs to go where, the film really improves. It gets tighter.
Yes.
And that's probably more around the halfway mark, really. I mean, that's around sort of the time. That's really around the time that Henry Cavill reveals very clearly that he is the baddie.
Yes. Though he's got wonderful scenes at the beginning.
Yeah.
Where he seems to be like I almost had a moment where I thought, oh, he's being set up so that he can take over the franchise from Tom Cruise. Right? Like at the very those scenes in the bathroom when they're fighting the other guys and so on. So I think he does the action so wittily. It's almost like an Errol Flynn kind of type of playing, really. But I thought initially the problem to me might have been kind of one of cinematography. Like, I don't know if it was the print or the projection, but all of the first 20 minutes or so seemed a little bit like both too dark and also with too much light. It's almost like the film. When you on your program for Photoshop or whatever, when you increase the light, it just makes everything go. Yeah.
Higher contrast or
no,
gray?
No. It's if you increase the light, all of the colors dampen down, right? Yeah, but then
the print like kind of washed out. You mean
it's both washed out and dark. Yeah. So I think all of the opening sequences of the film, they didn't have the intensity of color of the later sequences. Yeah.
That wasn't something that particularly occurred to me, but although I suppose it's worth saying that the one of the central opening scene of the film is set in a sort of underground car park basement. It's supposed to be quite dark.
It's supposed to be dark, yes.
But it didn't seem to be a mistake to me that I didn't notice anything.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, that was my feeling, that kind of, part of what felt like low energy was actually kind of being created by the image itself. It wasn't just the playing or, because normally those opening sequences are very boom, 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 with the music and, the deception and the masks being revealed, kind of,
Well, it's an American James Bond.
Yeah.
I'd say more than Bourne ever was. Actually, James Bond has become more like Bourne. Yeah. But really, it was Mission Impossible was kind of the answer to James Bond in its spectacle and stunts and kind of personality.
Yes.
And so opening the films with those big action sequences, which then lead into the that's iconic. And this one doesn't quite have that. It starts off darker and slower.
Yeah, it's true.
Which feels a little bit a little bit disappointing, but on the other hand, I don't really have a problem with it. Like the film kept my interest. And it felt, it set up the story kind of appropriately, I suppose. So and the relationships and so on.
Yeah.
It still had kind of kind of twists and reveals and revelations and things going wrong, and we left the plutonium and they got it, and that's like the opening mistake of the film. They have the plutonium in their hands and then it goes. Because we left it behind. We were played.
What I really liked about Tom Cruise this time around is not only that he's always so concentrated and so focused and trying so hard, but that he's brought comedy to his playing. So actually, obviously, there's this consciousness that he's a lot older now, right? So, they make him miss a lot more, right? And he plays that missing of things for laughs. Yeah. Kind of, it's meant to be funny when he stretches out his leg to get to the helicopter and doesn't make it, or... Yeah.
I'd have to rewatch the previous 2 or 3, but I think that's been in his character for a little while now. I think it's come out more since Simon Pegg joined the cast.
Yes, the humor has come out more.
The humor's come out more, but I think it's. I mean, the first one had a reasonable combination. It was really heavy on thriller stuff, though. Really.
Yeah. The
second one was just like so down the line, serious sort of action movie, and as I recall it, and then since kind of the J.J. Abrams one, it's lightened up, and that's been to its benefit.
I'd have to rewatch them as well, but it seems to me that whenever there's been humor in these films, it's rarely come from Cruise. Right. Whereas actually, he got a fair share of laughs just by not succeeding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whereas before what you'd get is that sheer will and determination to succeed, right? So he would fall back, but then the will would. So whereas actually, now it's kind of played for laugh, and then he goes back, right? So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of, if it's deliberate and if I'm right, it's a witty way to make his age work for him.
Yeah. I like the fact that he's a good guy in kind of the purest way, and this film makes a real point of it in that he doesn't. He will not kill. He has to take on the role of this kind of shadowy figure that they don't know. What's his name? Luck or Lake or something. He has to play him to try and get in on this plutonium deal and pretend that he's him. And this guy is like super evil, and so the stories go. Like he's killed children and done all sorts. And Hunt is the absolute opposite. And the film makes a real point of saying like they have this plan that we're going to kill all these cops to make off with this. They're trying to kidnap a bloke who's in a convoy, and the tension is he going to do it? And of course, he finds a way around it and manages to kind of keep everyone safe and undercut what the plan was. And then after that, there's a very, very, very deliberate scene with a police officer getting shot. Female police officer. The IMF are about to get away with their target, and they're spotted by a female police officer. This is in Paris. And basically, the answer is they should shoot her. I mean, anyone else would. And Henry Cavill, you see him going for his gun very slowly. But Cruise's whole thing is please go away, because essentially saying we're going to have to. I really don't want to have to do that. She's shot by someone else.
Yes.
The guys who are after them, blah blah blah. He kills them, but he really makes sure that like she's going to be looked after.
I know, but I think that's very inconsistent in the film. So
really,
yes. So I appreciate what you're saying and the thought behind it, because I think the film does make a very important point out of making Ethan Hunt a moral person, right?
And I think it's important how hard it is to do that. He has to work so hard to be that good, and that's really important. It's not.
On the other hand, he's throwing people out of helicopters every 2 minutes.
The baddies, not every 2 minutes, and it is the baddies.
Well,
the guys who are
the driver of the baddies. You don't know.
It's the guy who's trying to kill him.
It's the driver of. One can split hairs, right? My point is,
hairs.
I am because I think it's kind of inconsistent.
I don't think so.
Well, he kills a lot of people in this movie.
He kills a few people.
Well, I don't know. I haven't counted, but it seems like a lot, And in a way, it doesn't matter, right? So I just think it's inconsistent that there's such a, and yet I think it is important that the whole film, the whole ethos of the film, is that Ethan Hunt is the kind of person who would save one man, who cares about the one man, at the risk of millions or whatever, or one person at the risk of millions, So I think if you are going to do that, then you have to be more consistent about it. Really.
Well, I think crucially it's contrasted in this film with the manifesto of the baddies, which is what it's revealed that Henry Cavill has written, which is this thing about killing the maximum number of people creates the maximum benefit, or something along those lines.
The longer the peace. The more people you kill, the longer the peace afterwards.
And which is why they're trying to set off these 2 nuclear warheads in the kind of sort of Kashmir, which is a kind of corridor between China and India and the Middle East, where there's a good 2 billion people.
It's the source of all drinking water, or much drinking water. So if you spoil that drinking water, you not only destroy the area that the bomb hits, but actually you contaminate, you leave without water a third of the people of the population of the world, or something like that.
And the baddies have this kind of sort of moral argument which they believe in, which is that there's a greater good to come out of this. And Hunt's whole thing is there is no such thing as a greater good. You can't kill a person, or you can't kill a good person, let's say, for any reason. Which, he doesn't believe in that kind of sacrifice. People sacrifice themselves or are willing to. Like, he won't shoot. Ving Rhames, right at the start, it says, you've got to let me die to get away with the plutonium. Blah, blah, same thing. He won't do that, and the plutonium gets away. It's really deliberate.
I know that's what the film is trying to do, and yet he is this action hero who does throw people off airplanes, So I just think that's inconsistent.
I think it's within the but you're still, it's within a genre, you know. It's within.
I get that.
Well, I don't see why then is it so.
Well, because
inconsistent.
the reason why I'm bringing it up is because then the film gets a bit too sanctimonious with it, which is an element that I don't like. You know, so and I think actually that kind of preachy moral thing that you like is what I like
I don't
least.
think it's got preachy. You mean what Michelle Monaghan says at the end about being in the right place or whatever? There's speech at the end.
No, not just that. I mean, you know, this whole thing about making him seem like a pure person, you know, whereas actually the whole thing about being an agent like him is that he is by definition impure. You can't be pure and kill people. And he's killed loads. This is, you know, number 6 in the series, right? So to kind of try to make him out, you know, as like this incredibly moral person who values each little leaf in the planet is silly.
I think you're really overstating what I think of him. By what I like to see in these films is these acts of heroism. I think the guy is a true hero, and that's what I really like to see. And you don't get this moral, cloudy, black, grey thing with him. The whole point is you can't do this. I mean, like basically, he's Superman, right? He's Superman more than Henry Cavill. You know, you can't take a life, blah blah blah. And of course, the other thing is like he's kind of Superman, but also he's vulnerable and. Kind of prone to mistakes or you know.
Let me tell you what I like best about the film. What I like best about the film were the action sequences. I also love it that it's like an old-fashioned, like you mentioned James Bond. It is like an old-fashioned spy thriller of the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, where it's a thrill to see, like, I don't know, Istanbul in the Bond films or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like in this film, you know, you have like Paris and London, like you've never seen them before. Like London is just magical, right? Like all of those chase sequences, you know, around St. Paul's, right? Like, you know, going up the cupola of St. Paul's and out onto the roof, and then, you know, through the roof of the closed bridge, right to the very top of the Tate Modern. That was like gobsmacking. Yeah, it was just thrilling to see, really.
And actually, you kind of think that since the 60s, when that globetrotting stuff was not a novelty, but kind of really spectacular because people didn't see these places very much. Now people do, but still, it's so spectacular in this. That's actually kind of an achievement.
It makes you see them in a new way. And actually, it doesn't only make you see them in a new way, it's a spectacular sight for spectacular motion. Yeah, like, you know, kind of acts of movement. Like, and actually, one of the other things that I love about Tom Cruise is, I don't know if it's real or not, but if it's not real, they take the trouble to trick you, whereas a lot of other films don't. You know, so there's like that bit where he kind of jumps into the helicopter as the helicopter moves up. And actually you see the whole movement, right? Like you see him on a rooftop jumping onto the helicopter rope, and then the helicopter goes up, and then of course it cuts and, you know, yeah, like you're somewhere else. But actually just the movement from, you know, from the roof to the rope to it going up, it's just thrilling. Like he takes the trouble to kind of have it all within one shot, right?
Yeah.
To have that movement begin and be completed within the one shot. Whereas, you know, in a Bourne film, that would have been like 25 cuts or something, right? And like you'd have no idea whether a person was capable of doing that or not. Yeah. Like here, clearly a person is capable of at least faking doing it, right? Like, yeah.
Well, the thing about Tom Cruise is that, you know, one of the kind of well-known or infamous factoids about him is that he does all his own stunts, and he's really keen on that. I agree that the stunts are fucking spectacular, and I agree that the way they're shot, seeing complete motion and seeing Tom Cruise identifiably doing
thrilling.
this stuff is absolutely thrilling. Climbing the rock face at the end and that sort of thing.
Yes, I think so. I loved all of the set pieces, and I love the use of locations within the set pieces, and they were imaginative because, you know, they're beautifully filmed. So when you see him running from St. Paul's over the bridge towards the Tate, you know, the very geometry of the roof of the bridge, which who has ever seen it before, right? It's like you wonder what work has gone into scouting that, right, and making those shots. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about the film. I think it's full of amazing shots, you know, which are a thrill to see kind of on their own. It's a very, very well-made film.
Yeah, it is.
There's less comedy, and Simon Pegg, I think, is less well used than before. So that would be a criticism.
I've always found his character a little bit overbearing in the films. I like that they gave him a little bit less to do, to be honest.
I think he's badly served this time because other time, I mean, he's basically used as an archetypal secondary supporting actor. So he's really only used to tell the plot. He tells you what's going to happen or what needs to happen, or and to fulfill several mechanical aspects of it. That's all, So
and deliver a few laughs.
not very many this time around.
No, not as many. But like I say, I don't mind that. I think
who I didn't.
He is a secondary character, and I think they played up his kind of I can't do it. I'm Simon Pegg. They played it up a bit too much previously, and they did less of it in this.
Well, I liked all of that in the past. I think it's getting a bit too old now so I think I know that it's not that many years ago, but there is a difference in, seeing somebody who could pass for, late 20-ish, mid 30-ish, be that nerdy, geeky guy, and someone who is now clearly in their mid to late 40s and still having that nerdy, geeky thing.
Tom Cruise is 56.
I know he's my age.
Is he?
Yes, but I haven't had as many facelifts as him.
but he's kind of carrying on. I mean, it's got to get to a point. It's got to get to a point when they come to like Mission Impossible 9 where they're going, we do have to work in really to the story the fact that these guys are still doing this at this age.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll develop some wheelchair action.
Yeah. I'll be looking forward to that.
Fight sequences.
What do you reckon to the stuff with his wife?
I didn't like that. I don't. You see, I think. I mean, what I love about these films, in a way, is that. I mean, they are very psychological, in the sense that people's villainy and so on is kind of made understandable, really, and also this idea of life as a kind of a chess game that's played on different planes, and that there are different game plans that could shift, right? So, there is a kind of a sense of of psychology and villainy and, geopolitics that all melt into one, but there's very, very little about love or feeling, except, kind of feeling is weakness, feeling is what makes you vulnerable. And, from the very first moment in the film where, Kristen Stewart dies, under the Prague Bridge, which I thought was such a fantastic moment in the first film.
Kristen Scott Thomas.
Kristen Scott Thomas, yeah, she's fantastic in the first film. It's almost like, the things that the hero has an attachment to. He only has an attachment to them so that he could briefly suffer before getting on with the mission.
Yeah.
Right? So actually, I think to have made him in this film, he's in love with two women at the same time, right? Neither of whom he can love. I just kind of think it's it doesn't add very much, and it feels soppy.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I like what she added to. I like what she added to the jeopardy, I suppose. The other woman that he cares about is also right there and is going to die in 15 minutes if they can't save it. So the tension is raised even higher. But she doesn't add an awful lot else.
No.
I don't think the last scene, the climactic fight, would be changed that fundamentally if she weren't there.
I don't think it's well done, because the only reason to bring those two women in as women he loves is if his love for them is something that affects or complicates the way the mission is done.
Exactly.
Yeah. But actually, one of them does initially, early on in the film. So you think that the introduction of the other one, that it would also, so that you could create levels of tension around that the film doesn't really succeed in doing. So really, it just feels like a soppy added on element.
Exactly. It's her only function in the end is to make it a bit more tense.
Yeah.
For Ethan Hunt,
yes.
and not to do anything else.
Well, to make him more of a hero, my life would have been, wouldn't have been so perfect without you.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah. I was so prepared for that last scene to be like a setup, because it was a mirror of the earlier scene where the guy wakes up in the hospital bed,
yes.
and they're trying to get the password off his phone. And then it turns out that it's once they convince him that they've read out his manifesto on telly, and so he gives them the password. And then it turns out it's been a setup, and he's in a warehouse somewhere. And you've seen this before in Mission Impossible films. I think there was one very early on in the first one as well, where they were wearing masks as well in the voice things. That's when they first introduced the whole masks and voices, which continues to be the most fun thing in the world.
I love
if
that.
someone takes off a mask.
I think they didn't use the masks enough, and actually they didn't use the voice thing enough. I would have loved to have seen more of it, though.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's used efficiently.
Yeah, there's a good moment with it. There's a really clever moment with it.
But I was so prepared for that last scene where, because it's the same thing. It's the guy in the hospital bed has been knocked out and he wakes up there and he doesn't really know how long he's been there, and then he's got people around him talking to him, and I was so expecting that it was going to be someone was dressed up as Michelle Monaghan or whatever it is, and the walls were going to come down because it was so fucking perfect and idyllic, and music going, oh, it's lovely, and then it just turns out that it is actually lovely.
One of the things that I found interesting, and I'm just going to look it up, is the film is it's so clearly a Tom Cruise vehicle that they're not advertising the other people enough. And I always have this thing about American films, right? Like, do the producers really think that not putting Alec Baldwin and Angela Bassett and and so on in the credits, right? Because to me those are attractions. Like, I would go see a film if Alec Baldwin or Angela Bassett were on it, right? Like, to me, it's a plus. Knowing that they're in it I might not just, so they're not big stars like Tom Cruise. I might not just go see a film because Angela Bassett is in it anymore. But,
in combination,
it would be an added attraction for me to go see it. And the thing is that the film has so many people like that, right? And you wonder why, like they're barely advertising
Henry Cavill. Yeah, he's the second biggest face on the poster, and he doesn't have a name.
Yeah,
But I think kind of I think I'm going to see a Mission Impossible film anyway. These films are going to make I don't know $500 million each or more.
Yeah.
So when someone else kind of shows up, like Angela Bassett or Alec Baldwin, it's just, isn't it nice that they're in it too?
Yes, well, that's true.
Yeah. I really enjoy the surprise of them. Even though they're not always a surprise, I think there's very few people in this that haven't been in a previous one.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you kind of maybe you kind of forget that they're there. Go, he's here.
I wonder if this, So you were talking about like wheelchair, he is getting on, right? And I think one of the things that brought it out to me was having Alec Baldwin play the older statesman, the head of the section, his silvery, hair and his suits, and and basically he's played almost like a father figure, right? And they're basically the same age.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Alec Baldwin is, but there might be a few years age difference between them, but not much, right? So how much longer can Tom Cruise get away with playing like the young, out of control buck?
He's 4 years older.
4 years older. There
Tom
you
Cruise.
go.
I think the contrast is the one guy who ages with dignity,
and the other guy they probably both have tons of faceless actually.
Yeah. Well, Alec Baldwin's got a better doctor then.
Well, or he's had a good doctor to his face and kept his hair grey.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a pleasure to see him. Who was the villain? Is it Sean Harris?
Sean Harris, yeah.
The red-haired guy. He's fantastic.
Who is he?
Actually. I think I saw him. Could it be the Vikings? But he's been in a whole bunch of stuff.
He was in Rogue Nation, which this is the thing. I've seen it, but I don't really remember. I remember kind of a few set pieces and things, but who remembers the plots really?
He's been in 57 films.
24-Hour Party People, Creep, Harold Brown.
Oh, 71. He was Macduff in Macbeth, so I know him from that.
Leon Macduff.
Oh, he was in 71.
Yeah, that was good.
And that was really good. And he was in Prometheus, of course.
Was he in Prometheus?
Yeah, he was in Prometheus.
Who was he in that? Just one of the guys who died?
No, he was one of the nasty guys who died. But I think he had a prominent role. Let me just check that. That's terrible because you don't get any information here except his name. Oh well. So anyway, he's very good in this. He's a guy who really looks like he's got menace. Yeah, kind of, and that he's hard.
I mean, to be honest, I'm looking at the cast list of Prometheus, and I've forgotten that Idris Elba was in it.
One forgets that Idris Elba isn't anything, I'm sad to say, really. I know he's got his worshippers, but everybody remembers him from Luther. And then kind of everything else he's been on, like, you know, I think somebody else could have done it better, really, you know. So, no, I know that that's a controversial thing to say, but think of him in Thor. You could imagine other people playing that role.
Who was in Thor?
Well, he's the gatekeeper. I forget the name of the character, but he's the gatekeeper to Asgard. Right?
Actually, to be fair, I haven't seen Thor. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, kind of, I mean, let's look him up. I mean, he's really forgettable in quite a lot of the stuff that he's done.
You remember him as a personality.
I think
more than obviously, although he's very memorable from The Wire. That's what made his name.
Yeah. You know, he's wonderful in The Wire. He's wonderful in Luther, I think. And everything else has been, you know, questionable. I mean, I don't remember him from Avengers. My God, we talked about how unsatisfactory he was in the Dark Tower.
Dark Tower, yeah.
You know, yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
But he's not in Mission Impossible.
No.
Yeah. Anything else?
For me, the Mission Impossible series, over the last 20 odd years now, it's my favorite series. It's my favorite action series. It's my favorite series. I prefer it to all the Avengers films. I prefer it to all the Star Wars films. You know, I prefer it to the Bourne films. Yeah, I think it's the most kind of consistently imaginative.
Well executed.
Yeah, the one that has had the very best action sequences. You know, and the most imaginative ones, really. So on the one hand, it's a formula. You know the patterning of that formula very well. But they're incredibly stylish films. You know, they're often very humorous, you know, and in a way, they also have a kind of a light touch. Yeah, they're kind of, you know, they're played for laughs and for fun. You know, but they're like brilliantly executed. And I think actually this is in the same pattern. I mean, you know, this hasn't kind of altered my opinion of the series as a whole. I think it's the very best series of the last 25 years.
Yeah, and what I really like about it is that for such an enormous film series, it doesn't have toxic fans. You know, it doesn't have people going, oh, well, that's not what Ethan Hunt would do. Oh, that's this, that, and the other. Oh, you got this wrong. Oh, I hate you if you don't like it. Yeah. It's just, it's really friendly, accessible action with loads of imagination, so on, as you say. And it's got a multi-millionaire movie star genuinely throwing himself into real peril for your enjoyment.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes. And I mean, just a word about Tom Cruise, right? Because, you know, in a way, he's the star everyone loves to hate. Yeah. But I just think there's something very fascinating about him because I think he's been a star since 83. Something like that, 84.
Yeah.
You know, and consistent box office since 83. And here we are in 2018, you know, with his name above the title on his own, carrying a huge film in a huge franchise. And actually, I can't think of anyone who's had the career that he's had.
We've spoken about this before, and I suggested Charlie Chaplin purely for the length of his career from beginning to end, but he had long periods where not much was happening. Yeah. And there's also Tom Hanks, but he had a period of not really doing anything that good until the early 90s.
Also, I think Tom Hanks became a star later than Tom Cruise.
Yes, I
think
he did.
There's that. And obviously there are people like John Wayne, but I also think if you think of John Wayne when he really became a star, which is like, you know, at the very earliest, say 39 with Stagecoach, but actually it's probably more likely like, you know, early mid-40s. You know, and you think of like, you know, the 70s, that's just 30 years. Well, Tom Cruise has already had, you know, a longer starring career than
35 years if we're talking 83.
That's right. So, you know, I mean, I think it's just kind of extraordinary to see him, and this is obviously going to be an enormous success, as it deserves to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so we recommend that you go see it. It's really great. It's the best action movie of the moment.
I think your kitchen's about to explode. We need to get Ethan Hunt in. Save the day.
All right, goodbye. So, welcome again, everybody. We've just come back from seeing Mission Impossible Fallout for the second time. And this time we saw it on 3D IMAX. Is there anything that you want to say about the format in which we saw it the second time?
Yeah, I suppose Limax. We should say, not full on IMAX.
Yes.
It never is these days. It's always just a much bigger screen.
Yeah.
But it's a clearer image and louder sound and and the rest of it. The 3D, I felt actually at the start I felt it was really bad. It almost looked like it had been post-converted. I'm not sure if it was or not. The characters in the early scenes had a real cardboard cutout look to them, really flat and just sort of in stages. But that wasn't a problem as the film went on. And by the time you got to Tom Cruise on the helicopter, I mean, that's what the 3D was really there for. It was to emphasise Tom Cruise on a helicopter, hanging off the bottom and not dying.
Yes.
It was great.
I mean, that was great. But I also felt like I don't like 3D. I do like IMAX very much, actually. I like the size and I like the sharpness. But what I thought the 3D reveal this time around was kind of the layers of special effects.
Okay.
So that, like in the helicopter scene, for example, you would see the helicopter super sharp with the 3D standing out from, the background. And
when the helicopter's
clearly
on fire and crashing, it's very clear. More than it was the first time that's a 3D model.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as good.
Yeah.
I agree. Although I don't know if that is 3D or the IMAX or both.
Yeah, anyway,
apart.
I mean, I suppose what I want to say is that, instead of being something kind of that's thrilling, for me, it's generally an annoyance. And though sometimes it can be very revealing about, planes, and the use of effects within those planes. Like, it's almost like you notice that there are layers of special effects happening in between, like one plane and another.
Yeah, I'd say generally speaking, I didn't feel the 3D added anything useful, but the size of the screen was
Worth
great.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it hugely detracted either, though. My heart was still going like the clappers during the action scenes.
Yeah, no, for me it did detract. And it detracted, I mean, partly because, I wear glasses, and putting the other glasses on top of it is A, an annoyance, B, it fogs up, right? So, that kind of, you've got to keep on kind of removing your layers of glasses to kind of...
They don't fog up for me.
Yeah.
I wear spectacles as well, and the other ones don't fog up for me. I don't know if you were getting particularly hot and bothered.
Well, no, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I did like the film less the second time around, though I think it holds up incredibly well. And like you, I thought the action sequences, were amazing. The things that bothered me in the first film bothered me less. So, for example,
the first screening. You mean?
Yeah, the first screening. The sentimentality around the first wife and so on. I kind of, it didn't bother me. I was maybe less invested. I don't know. And the things that thrilled me continue to do so, and that is primarily around kind of the chase sequence. Though I do also think that the thing that I found most exciting in some ways about the first viewing was Henry Cavill's performance. And, he's still great, but actually the unexpected and the charm of it and so on, has a different effect. So, that surprise and delight that I greeted it with the first time around was a bit dampened.
Yeah, I suppose so. What we were talking about in between, because we've seen the films 2 days apart, but we're just kind of adding this on rather than releasing it as a separate podcast, because who needs that? And in the sort of time in between, we've hung out, and we were talking about Henry Cavill, and I was sort of saying that before the film came out, I was sort of worried about him as a villain, because he's a villain you see sort of less of now, although he used to be really just the way that film villains were before superpowers came along. A guy with an agenda and a weapon. It's like he's like a Bond villain or a Tom Clancy villain or something. And now that superheroes are the kind of main thing, villains are superpowered, or they're kooky or mad, or in some other way wacky that kind of matches the milieu that we have these days. I think it's fair to say that Cavill's character is not brilliantly written, as you were pointing out, but Cavill elevates him.
Yes.
And makes him memorable.
He gives a great performance.
And a great presence.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think that in an odd way, it's a star-making performance, right? Because, I mean, so far his only hits have been with Superman. And this is a film where he really stands out. He's really great, you know. And he's not only great to look at, but, you know, he's got all these asides and double takes and, yeah, kind of a lot of the performances without dialogue, really. You know, and he makes things funny and, you know, and exciting and agreeable and surprising.
Yeah, there's a lot of gesture, particularly the bathroom scene where he and Cruz are tracking... I keep forgetting the fucking guy's name, Lane is the other bad guy. John Lark, who's the guy who's going to meet this arms dealer. And they don't know who he is, but they're tracking him with a sort of RFID... phone sort of radar situation. Tracker. And it's not that the music doesn't drop out, which I thought it did. I was watching for the second time. It's the sound doesn't drop out. You still hear all the diegetic sound of doors opening and the crowd and stuff. But there's no dialogue. They're doing it silently, and every time someone goes past them, they check the phone, and then Cavill looks to Cruz and just shakes his head and does it again and again. And the way the camera moves as they go into the bathroom, it's actually reminiscent of the CIA infiltration sequence in the first film, pure white room and silent communication, and I think it's deliberate. And as people walk past, they exit the scene, and then the camera reframes to show you someone else who's at the urinal, and is it him, and is it not? And they move silently and smoothly from one side of the bathroom to the other, finding out who it is, and it's all done with camera movement and gesture and facial communication, and it's brilliant. And that scene develops really, really nicely as well, because then you get, so they identify him, and they knock him out, and they get him into the stall, and then a different threat emerges, because a new group of lads come into the bathroom and see their feet under the stall, and think, it's a couple of guys getting off in a stall. So then they're kind of trying to make their way in. In the meantime, they're trying to scan the guy's face to make him ask. It develops really, really nicely with threats emerging and going away.
It's the best action film of the year. I mean, it has the best action scenes that I've seen this year. And the reason why is because, you know, the filmmakers have paid attention to them. So I think currently people mistake, you know, something going fast or something exploding for an action scene. And that's not an action scene, right? Like, you know, that's like a beat or a thing, right? A kind of, you know, an action scene has a logic and something leads to something, and it's like a good joke. You know, you have the setup, and then there's the development, and then there's a fallout, and then a fallout, and a fallout. So just the same way that you could build a joke on top of a joke on top of a joke, and in a comedic situation, here they do that with action. You know, and you know, and some of it is funny, and some of it is scary, and some of it has an emotional intent. You know, but it's kind of things logically following from the other, and just when you think that they can't go any further, they do. Or the opposite. You know, so for example, the scene where Tom Cruise ends up in the tower of the Tate Modern, you know, and there's an airplane going away, and you think, he's just going to jump and get on the airplane like he always does. And then he doesn't. Right? He can't. Right? Which is a surprise in itself, right? I
didn't find that a surprise. That to me was where that scene was ending.
That
whole it's a very, very long chase, and he's just about to catch up, and he misses him at the end, and it's the I'll get you the next time bit.
Well, I expect, you know, the thing Tom Cruise would normally do, as he does later on in the film, is to jump. Right, and kind of this time he's just a bit too far and doesn't, and that in itself, you know, acts kind of in relation to audiences' expectations. So, you know, the action sequence has a kind of a logic that the audience is aware of and kind of complicit with and pleased by.
Yeah, there's one bit there's one bit that I really like, which is a very quiet bit, which is in a central chase sequence. It's the bit with the bike when they're attacking the police convoy to get Solomon Lane out of the police truck, and the idea initially is that we're going to just kill them all, and Cruz says, no, I'm not doing that. And so he takes it upon himself to do something different. And so they smash it and they get, and then Solomon ends up in the water, and then they're running away from everybody. And it's very, very intricate, and they end up capturing Solomon themselves, and they end up underneath in the sewers, basically, on a boat. And once that's happened, it's been a really, really intense action scene with a lot of moving parts. And then you get about 15 seconds of them just puttering in the sewers, and the music's still kind of going, but very lightly. It's just going, it's kind of a holding pattern. And you kind of know that things aren't quite over yet, and they do then flare up again a little bit later, or moments later. But it's like the film knows you need time to decompress.
Yes.
You know, and relax and take in what you've seen. It understands pacing. I mean, it's staring at you in the face. It's giving you time where nothing is happening to calm down a little bit. I love that.
Yes, I love that. I love that it understands pacing. I also love, in conjunction with that it understands editing. You know, kind of. There's none of these like super quick edits of, you know, where one action is kind of broken up into like 50 components or something. You know, you see things happening, and often the way that you see it then is part of what makes it thrilling, right? So, for example, you know, the helicopter shots where you see him hanging, and all of a sudden the camera will pull back, and then you'll see, you know, that he's hanging on top of this huge crevice, or so that actually the framing, composition, and movement, you know, becomes part of what makes the action sequence thrilling before the cut. I really I thought it was brilliantly done.
Yeah, and what occurs to me, and again, this is something I'm picking up on that we were talking about ourselves yesterday, is that Mission Impossible is basically the only game in town left now that Bond's gone dark and taken on the Bourne thing of shaky camera and dark kind of personal problems with the heroes and that sort of thing. What else is there now that's doing that has this lightness of touch?
Yes. I mean, the lightness of touch is important, and I was just wondering if it has more to do with that. Like, you know, so you know, it's not done with a great deal of depth, but nonetheless, this is a film in which there are things at stake to actions and to explosions, right? Like, you know, it doesn't feel like gratuitous, yeah? You know, so, I mean, people could die, you know, an atomic bomb could fall, when Tom Cruise is thrown from his motorcycle and he lands on the pavement, you feel it hurts, right? Like, yeah, so it's kind of, I think that's kind of interesting, because I think that's what a lot of action movies have lost, right? The kind of, you know, that things hurt. Yeah, that actually, you know, buildings are property and they cost money and people's lives are invested in it. Yeah, that all of these things matter, actually. It's surprising in this film how little things blow up. And in fact, you know, when they say that Rome has blown up and so on, it's a con. You know, it's kind of it's part of a sting. So I kind of, and I think most of action cinema right now, like, they've lost that, you know, what's at stake in things blowing up? Why are things blowing up? You know, why does it matter and where does it hurt? Those are kind of key things, really. Yeah,
I get what you mean, and I think you're right. And I think this also relates to what you were being a bit cynical about beforehand, which was what I like about Ethan Hunt is that he is very pure. Because you were being quite cynical about that, saying, well, he kills people.
Yes.
And my kind of thought on this, and I was really paying attention to it this time, you know. My thought on this is that, okay, so for one thing, we are within a genre in which people, it depends on the film, but people die quite freely sometimes, you know, particularly nameless, faceless baddies, right? For like the guy in the helicopter, for instance, who he throws out. And I'm not saying that he doesn't kill people quite freely, but I think it's a mistake it doesn't engage with the premise of the character to be cynical about it. I think that police officer scene we talked about, the police officer who he's trying to protect, because she gets shot, or she gets shot, and then the four baddies who are about to kill her, he won't let that happen. He kills the four of them.
Yes.
So one life would have been taken, but actually 4 have now been taken. But it's not about that. It's about who those lives belong to. She's an innocent.
Yes.
And he is protective of. This is why you don't get this kind of collateral damage. He's not so happy to just run around causing collateral damage, things blowing up and the rest of it. He is. It is important that he is a moral character, and actually this drives a lot of the action. There's an awful lot that's set up with making choices right at the start of the film, right when the plutonium is taken. They're trying to buy it, and then they are ambushed. And Ving Rhames' character he has a gun held to his head, and there's this shot, which is it's the plutonium. And then the camera reframes to the car, which is right next to it, reframes to the exit, which it's pointing at, and reframes to Cruz. In this one shot, it says, "This is the exit. You can win."
Yes.
And of course, he doesn't because his team is in trouble. He won't abandon them. And this is the thing that sets up the entire thing of the film. And this is why Henry Cavill ends up being assigned to his team, because he let it go.
I get that, but on the other hand, I think these two things go together, because Tom Cruise is America's national Boy Scout or whatever, so. It's also part of his persona and so on. But I also think we can't lose sight of the fact that this guy is a spy. It's like his profession is to trick people and to con people and to kill people. Right?
How realistic do you want it to be, though? This is kind of pure escapism, and we are allowed to indulge, aren't we, in the idea that he is doing it for the right reasons or in the right way.
Well,
I think there's this idea that for Ethan Hunt, good enough is never good enough. If good enough was good enough, he would have let the police officer die. He would have let his team go, because that's part of the job. You might die.
Well, I get that.
And that's what's enjoyable and what gives things stakes.
I don't know what to say, because on the one hand, of course, I see that. On the other hand, I do think that it's kind of interestingly contradictory. Yeah, so it's not an either-or thing. These things go together. But they have contradictions, and those contradictions are interesting.
Well, if you want to leave it at that.
Well, I don't know what else to say, because, on the one hand, so for example, you don't know anything about the guy who, is piloting the helicopter. For all you know, he's just an employee. He could very well just be an employee of the NGO that they're all working for, right? So, but he's got no qualms about just throwing him off the helicopter, right? So, kind of that goes together with... him being loyal to his friend and him trying to save the policewoman. Yeah, but I'm just saying there are contradictions there.
I appreciate that, but I mean, the henchman thing has always been the case of you are working for the baddies. Yes. I mean, if you want to get into the minutiae of who they are, I mean, Austin Powers did that joke about it, about no one thinks about the family of a henchman. Remember? And so you can sort of, I suppose, make that argument, but I think this is where you have to accept that we're working within a genre in which there are goodies and baddies.
I take your point and I accept it, but I just kind of, I'm just flagging that up. I don't know what else to say about it.
I also like the sacrifice, because I think I talked about the idea of the greater good, and how for Hunt there is no such thing as a greater good if an innocent life is in danger. And Angela Bassett talks about it. In fact, this is one of the least believable things of the film, is that Angela Bassett starts off by saying the conflict between the IMF and the CIA, who Angela Bassett represents, is Hunt should have taken the plutonium, abandoned his team, and everything would be fine.
Yes.
This is why I'm putting Henry Cavill on the team. And then by the end of the film, she's saying, I understand why you are the way you are and why that's useful. And actually, the least believable thing about the film is that she believes what she's saying.
Yeah.
But that the film ends with that speech, and by wrapping it back round again, is really, really important. It's what the film is about. And what's the other point? I was thinking that the idea of so what I had started by saying there was the idea of if there is innocent life in danger, then the greater good doesn't matter. But on the other hand, personal sacrifice is totally acceptable, and Hunt's not the only one who puts himself in positions where he could die to save others. There's also, in the fight with Solomon Lane at the end, it's Rebecca Ferguson, Solomon Lane the baddie, and Benji, Simon Pegg's character, he's being hanged and he has a box underneath him that's just about keeping him alive, stopping him from being throttled, which Ferguson has managed to get under him. And then she's being attacked, and he kicks the baddie to help her, thereby kicking the box away and sacrificing himself, and then it leads to the thing of, is he going to die? Is she not going to die? Is she going to get him in time? And of course she does.
Anyway, you're right that the film has that whole thing about self-sacrifice, because again, with her, with the Rebecca Ferguson character, I mean, what gets her into trouble is she doesn't shoot him.
Yeah.
You know, she could have shot him and doesn't shoot him. So, you know, kind of, she's putting his good over hers. And, you know, Tom Cruise is the same with Ving Rhames. And then they all do that together when they go, you know, to India, Russia, the border of India and Russia, you know, because they say very actively it's a suicide mission, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, that is kind of like, a kind of a theme in the film. I'm just kind of not sure what weight to give that. I mean, it certainly sounds something that the film is working with, you know, and it's kind of putting there. But I'm not...
I think the film is framing it as very central, and it's something I like about it, ultimately. I think it's something that carries it. It's carried through very consistently, even with the guy he throws out the helicopter.
Yes, well, and, you know, and it ends with, like, you know, Tom Cruise sacrificing the woman he loves to another man. I mean...
there's that as well. You know. I agree with you on the sentimentality of the wife thing.
So anyway, I don't know, and actually I think I also don't much care. I don't think that's what's significant about the film. I mean, what's significant to me about the film is that it has about 4 or 5 action set pieces that are just amongst the best I've ever seen, really. You know, kind of the motorcycle sequence through Paris is phenomenal. You know, the sequence where they go from St. Paul's, you know, over the Thames and into the Tate Modern is out of this world good, really. A model, I think, for any action sequence. And I think it's also fascinating because most of it is quite, it is, you know, you have bits of dialogue, but it's mostly silent. It is all about the action, really. Silence is the wrong word. There are sound effects. Yeah, but there's very little dialogue, you know, throughout those sequences. And then the third one, the helicopter thing over
the mountains,
the Himalayas or whatever mountain range it is again out of this world great, really. You know, so I mean, I think the film would be worth seeing if it only had one of those. It has 3, and it's really like a kind of a masterclass in action filmmaking, as far as I'm concerned.
There are 2 scenes I wanted to pick up on that are kind of implausible in different ways, and I like one of them. I don't like the other, and I've been thinking about them. So the first is a skydiving scene.
Ah, yes.
Where Cruise and Cavill are infiltrating Paris, and they're going to jump out of a plane and then infiltrate this party to meet the White Widow, the arms dealer.
Yes.
And they're having a little bit of a conflict on the plane, a bit of a tete-a-tete, you know, sort of, you don't want me here and I'm all here to watch you and blah, blah, blah. And there's this thing about Cavill's his oxygen tube to his mask. It's not working properly, and you kind of think, like, is he fucking it up deliberately? And Cruise fixes it for him. And then when they see the environment they're going to be jumping into, Cruise sees it's an electrical storm. He says, we can't jump through this. Cavill says, fuck you, I'm going. And not only does he do that, which is reckless, but he rips off Cruise's oxygen tube. Yeah. And I can't for the life of me work out why he does that, right? Because at this point, he wants...
Oh, I get that.
He wants Ethan Hunt to be alive. He wants to be able to frame him for what he's doing. I don't see a good purpose to that. He's just being a dick. And then Cruise... fixes it and dives down and catches up with him, and then sees that his oxygen mask, Cavill's oxygen mask, is gone again. So then he performs an act of self-sacrifice and removes his own oxygen tube, puts it in Cavill's, who's unconscious at this point, then sets off Cavill's parachute to save him, then manages at the last second to save himself. And it's what Cavill has done in this scene is I can't work out what his motivation is and what his objectives are, because it's not useful to him for Cruise to be dead or incapacitated or anything.
I didn't read the scene the way you read it.
Okay.
To me, it kind of made sense. You know, that he wants to go. He's not going to be held up, and he does that thing to Tom Cruise to prevent him from stopping him. So. You know, I kind of this thing about needing him alive and so on. Well, he's on the plane, you know. So
I don't buy that scene really. I think it's artificial conflict to create an exciting action scene, which it is, but actually afterwards it doesn't make any sense, and it also then doesn't make sense why Tom Cruise isn't kicking him in the balls for doing what he did. He just kind of goes, okay, we've got to get on with it. Like, I guess that sort of makes sense, but he should be really pissed off with him.
I don't know. I mean, I think for me it works because it sets up like this macho competition between the two guys that only kind of really ends in the helicopter scene at the end. And actually, it's very much built up and underlined. You know, Tom Cruise says, "You prick," right? And kind of all of these glances about it is like a real kind of, you know, who's got the biggest dick kind of thing that's set up from that moment and kind of, you know, taken to the end.
I get that part of it, but I do think it's nonsensical. The thing I wanted to contrast it with is the one that's underground with Alec Baldwin and the team, and it's the one where there's a huge argument, and it's revealed that Ethan Hunt they think that he is this John Lark, because that's because of intel that we've seen Cavill has given to Angela Bassett's character.
Yes.
So he's framed him, and so Alec Baldwin, who's head of the IMF, is confronting Hunt with this, and a lot of things happen, and there's a lot of moving parts in it, and it ends with Hunt kind of Hunt incapacitates Alec Baldwin's character and says, "I'm sorry, I had to do this. I'm going to go off to this meeting because this is our chance to get the plutonium." And it's engineered such that they all leave, and Henry Cavill is left with Solomon Lane, who they have in custody.
Yes.
They have a conversation in which it's revealed that Henry Cavill is this bad guy who's written this manifesto and so on, and has this plan. And then, of course, it turns out, that's Simon Pegg in a mask he's talking to, not the baddie. And this was all engineered to get that revealed. And it's such an implausible scene that this conversation is being like... It's a conversation that's being had for Henry Cavill's benefit. Because everyone is in on it, apart from him.
Yes.
And I suppose Solomon Lane, he's unconscious. Everyone's in on it. And what the contrast I want to make is that I totally believe this scene. And I love it, and I think it's loads of fun.
Yes.
Even though it is even more implausible, really, I suppose, in some ways, than the skydiving scene, which I have problems with.
Yeah, well, neither of them bothered me.
Yeah. I don't know. I was trying to work out where the difference is, I suppose, and like I guess it's that if the problem I have with the skydiving scene is the motivations seem really stupid, whereas in the conversation scene, it's the sort of mechanisms that are stupid, but the purpose of what's going on isn't. And it fits with with that heightened Mission Impossible thing of everyone gets to wear a mask sometimes, and it turns out that you're him and he's you, and I'm wearing spy glasses and stuff. That all is just part of the heightened world that they're in.
Yes.
As long as the motivations make sense.
Yes, I love that. The only thing that I thought was missing in terms of Harry Cavill's character is, he's meant to be an idealist in a way, like, a fanatic, right? But an idealist, so who is this person who has planned his whole life to do something really terrible for the general good, to the point that he's written a manifesto and, like,
He should be more of a force of personality.
Well, he should, the idealism or has a plan or an idea of the world should come out somewhere. Whereas, really, he's purely action and reaction. Like,
Yeah, well, he does make more sense to me the second time, because the first time around I did kind of think he's quite a general kind of baddie, in that he's a bad guy with a plan and a bomb, and that's sort of it. And he does make more sense the second time. It comes out in the scene where he is in Paris with Angela Bassett, and he's giving her the fake intel on Hunt, and he's trying to convince her that why would Hunt turn? And he says, because look at the number of times you've disavowed him, look at the way you've treated him over the years, how many times is it going to be, how long until he's sick of that? And also, he's a guy who believed in something, and when he stopped believing in it, he realised it was a lie and a sham, and he turned. And so many people have been like that. Solomon Lane was like that. And what he's telling you there is why he is the baddie. He was in the CIA, and he turned, and he's just putting it onto Hunt to sell the story.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's what makes sense to me.
Yeah. No, that. I didn't.
You didn't, pick up on that especially.
I didn't pick up on that especially, and actually, what you say makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree that he seems too practical almost.
Yes. I mean, he really does remind me of Errol Flynn because he's just so much fun to watch, and he's ridiculously handsome, and also like really beefy and so on. But actually, it's all about the humor with which he plays these scenes, right? And it's all done through glances, basically, or through body gesture or posture, right? And he's just great fun to watch. I mean, though I thought very interestingly, for me, though probably for no one else, that if you look closely, Tom Cruise has better skin than he does, and he's like, 30 years older practically. Yeah, like
Right.
he's a lot older. Yeah, but he's got like this,
I didn't notice.
really smooth skin.
I loved looking at Cavill's face in this.
Yes.
There's the mustache and the facial hair and the stare that he's always giving, and the sternness.
Yes.
And the kind of sometimes he tightens his jaw.
Yeah.
That's something. He's great.
Yeah.
He does have facially, he just has this presence.
He's got character, yeah.
And you're right. The kind of the opposition, the kind of macho fight, and the constant standoff between he and Tom Cruise is great, and also the fact that he's a good 2 foot taller than Tom Cruise.
Yes.
but Tom Cruise, like I guess, okay, so partly like Tom Cruise has throughout his life managed to find angles to shoot himself from to make himself look normal. But also like when you can tell that he's 5'6" whatever he is, he still looks great because he's always running. He always runs at like super high speed. The guy never gives less than 100%. He never looks like he's acting running. The guy's just fucking running as fast as he can. That sort of thing. I love that.
Yes.
About him.
I do, and he looks great. So whatever he's doing right. I just thought it was interesting that Harry Cavill, who's so much younger. You see the lines under his eyes and a little the beginnings of crow's feet, and it's a face. It's a very handsome face and a young face, but already with character, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Tom Cruise has had all the creases smoothed out.
The last thing I wanted to mention, which I only picked up on the second time, is the White Widow character, who is the arms dealer they're dealing with. Who's this English lady. She's played by Vanessa Jane Kirby, and it was only on her introduction, the second time we saw the film, that I realised that she is the daughter of Max from the first film, who's played by Vanessa Redgrave.
Yes.
And it explains so much because she felt really familiar, and her voice is pretty much identical. It's kind of amazing. And she has this same kind of smoothness and confidence, and this thing of, you are a paradox. And actually the film, it was that thing in the first film of Vanessa Redgrave talking to Tom Cruise, talking to Ethan Hunt, and saying, you are a paradox. And when she's introduced in this, she's speaking on stage, and she meets Cruise's gaze, and that's when she says this thing about, my mother liked paradoxes. And I thought, oh, does she know? I mean, even though I know that she doesn't because I've seen the film once already, there's this thing of, maybe she does. Ooh, maybe she knows this.
I mean, what I appreciated about you bringing that up is because it underlines the extent to which the film is really coherent, it's really cohesive, and it's very much in dialogue with its own world. So, that's not the only element or strand that it brings in from the previous films. So there's the Rebecca Ferguson character, there's obviously Bing Rangs and so on, and Alec Baldwin, but also the wife from the third film, and so it actually is kind of bringing in all these elements. Like it's a world that it's created, and it kind of calls back to it. It brings parts of that world back into this new film in a way that, often series don't. So, for example, in the Bond films, it's very rare, right? I mean, obviously, you have the stock characters, M and so on, will reappear, but it's very rare.
They're not serialized.
Yeah.
They tend to be serialized.
Yeah.
What I like is that in these films, it's happened very slowly over the years. I feel like when they made the first Mission Impossible, they never thought this was going to be a series.
Yes.
It was quite standalone. And then when they said, okay, we're going to make a second one, as I recall it, nothing really came back. I mean, some characters came back, but it wasn't a sequel story-wise, And then when they've done 3, 4, 5, and 6, characters have been introduced and then kept there. So particularly Rebecca Ferguson's character and Simon Pegg's and Andy Baldwin, and they've no big deal has been made of it that they are now a really important sort of set of characters. It's just been quite casually that they are coming back and playing more parts, and I love that it doesn't feel like there is a sort of a history and a lore that you must know to understand these films, you know?
Yes.
Despite the fact these characters clearly just know each other and have worked together before and so on.
Yes, but I like the way that it's kind of developed what seems like almost organically, as opposed to, say, the Bond series, which they've clearly got a formula that works, they adhere to it, it's got a particular set of structure that they rarely deviate from, and you just kind of, you create a new episode based on that structure. Whereas actually this seems, to unfold from the previous one.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, shall we...
Yeah, I mean, I think I've exhausted what I think of the film and the series.
Okay, well, I'm exhausted, so...
Well, you are exhausted.
Let's wrap it up here.
Lovely. That'll be no more podcasts now after this one. I mean, well, we'll do podcasts on other films, but we're done on Mission Impossible 6.
All right, so thank you very much for listening. We are on iTunes, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud.
That's it, pretty much. Well, and eavesdropping@themovies.com for the back catalogue and so on and so forth.
Right. All right.
Yes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.